2004 United Kingdom, the pretty little town of Bishop Auckland. Their first child is a girl named Courtney. As a child, she is shy and quiet, and she never talks to strangers. At school, people who teach her notice that she is scared to speak up. When someone talks to her, she blushes. People at the time had no idea that this girl would one day be the center of attention for millions of people. 2017. Courtney, who is 12 years old, goes on stage for the first time on The Voice Kids UK. That song is Nutbush City Limits by Tina Turner, and she makes it to the final. The judges cheer, but her voice isn't as well known as those of bigger acts. That looked like it was it. But the truth is, that's when the crazy energy first showed up. The power that would explode across America a year later, in 2018. She is 13 years old. She goes on stage for season 13 of America's Got Talent. A huge crowd of people is sitting in the hall. There are 4 judges: Heidi Klum, Mel B, Simon Cowell, and Howie Mandel. To look at. Simple shy girl from Britain that she is. Everyone is ready for her to fail because her voice is shaking and her hands are shaking. Then Joe Cocker's Hard to Handle starts. The world stops moving in an instant. The schoolgirl changes into a rock star. She seems to be charged as she walks across the stage. The voice was torn, groaning, and wild. Right away, Janis Joplin and Amy Winehouse come to mind as comparisons. The gold ball is hit by Howie Mandel. Buzzer. The confetti falls from the sky. In just 1 week, the video of her act gets more than 50 million views on YouTube. It's not just a win. It's a worldwide hit. The girl who was scared to speak up in class is now taking over the whole country. After that, her life was split into before and after. There have been thousands of articles, contracts, and offers, as well as hundreds of interviews. It's Courtney, 13, who is the star of the season. The news calls her Little Janis Joplin, which means a girl from another time. But there is a bad side to the rapture as well. A huge number of comments show up on social media. She screams. She doesn't sing. Too much. Everything is planned. Thousands of strangers talk about her, judge her, and break down her picture. This seems like a big deal to a child. Every time before going on stage, she is gripped by terror. "I feel like my heart is going to jump out of my chest," she will claim in interviews. A lot of people don't see that, though. They only see fire and trust. No one knows that behind the cheers, a tragedy is happening that will stay with her for a long time. Following the end of America's Got Talent 2018, Courtney Hadwin became the talk of the show business world. She was given job offers, trips, and ads. The Cover Sessions, her mini record, comes out in 2019, a collection of covers of famous songs by Tina Turner and other artists. Videos of her singing keep getting millions of views. But fear was inside. They wanted a picture of a rock goddess from her when she was only 15. The managers told Courtney, "That's your brand. You have to be crazy, weird, and eccentric." She wanted to write her own songs, but they told her, "No, the public needs what we've come up with." She signs papers without fully understanding what they mean. Her voice, her name, and her freedom slowly got taken over by the business. At first, they felt a little dizzy, and then they passed out. It was called overload by psychologists. The body of a teen could not keep up with an adult star's speed. No one stopped, though. You need to work while they talk about you. And one day, Courtney just passed out at practice. "You need to slow down," the doctor told her, but she couldn't because if she did, everyone would forget how much they loved her. The very worst blow did not from people who hated her, but from people she trusted. There was someone on the team who sold her private text to reporters. Headlines said things like, "Courtney doesn't believe in her success. Courtney hates her song." Were those things true? Maybe. But taking words out of context made her an enemy of herself, and fans started to doubt. The media set up a pylon, and the girl was faced with betrayal. One night, Courtney just disappeared. She left the stage, the fans, and the glitter behind. She went back to her quiet British town and stayed in her room for weeks, not leaving. Her parents set off an alarm. The girl who had just shocked America was now sitting on the floor and wouldn't speak. That was the moment when fame stopped being her dream and became her nightmare. Fans asked her questions. Journalists made up stories about Courtney's illness, depression, and fights, but the real reason was deeper. In the quiet of her room, Courtney realized she didn't know who she was. The voice was someone else's, the stage was someone else's, and her life was someone else's. Her own self had been dissolved in the applause that wasn't for her anymore. When she went back on stage, she was a different person, more grown up, more guarded, and colder, but her voice still tore the hall. People in the audience could tell that something inside her was broken. Some said she lost her magic, while others said she got stronger. But the truth was that she was showing them a girl who had been through a tragedy that no one knew about. When Courtney went back on stage after winning America's Got Talent 2018, she thought she could take charge. But it turned out that the contract she signed in the early months of her fame became her chains. And grown men in expensive suits controlled her every move, note, and social media post. They told her, "No, you must stay the way they loved you." She wanted to add her own style to her songs. Your screams and crazy dances are what people know you for. On the inside, she screamed. She knew they were using her as a product, but if she refused, she would have to pay huge fines that a teenager can't even think about quietly. Everyone cheered, but behind the scenes there was a girl whose eyes showed fear. For the first time, she understood. At the show, there were lights, hundreds of people, and a sea of phones pointed at her. But when she left the stage and went to the wings, she felt lonely. She didn't have many friends left. Her British classmates were jealous and laughed. "Oh, the star has arrived." When she was in America, the only people around her were paid to be there. Even in hotel rooms, it was quiet. To block out the silence, she would sometimes turn on the TV or write messages that she did not send. It got worse for her because she couldn't find anyone who really understood her. Every time she went on stage, Courtney felt like she was playing a part she didn't want to play. 2021. A strange call came in. A man's voice on the other end said, "You must keep quiet." She thought it was a prank. But the next day, her parents received an unsigned letter. Inside was a newspaper clipping with her photograph and the words, "She will pay for everything." They thought it was hate at first, but soon someone began. People in the neighborhood saw a black car sitting nearby for long periods of time. This was a whole new level of scary. If she was afraid of the stage before, she was now afraid for her life. And what's worse, the police couldn't help because they said there was no direct threat. That's when Courtney first felt like her tragedy was just beginning. The more she tried to hide, the more pressure there was. Producers wanted performances, fans wanted new songs, and her family wanted her to be happy. They didn't say anything because they didn't know how to protect her. One night, a label rep came into her dressing room and made her sign a contract. He said, "If you don't go on stage tomorrow, you'll pay millions for every concert that gets canceled." As she read the tiny print, she knew there was no way out. Either she had to turn into a puppet, or they would ruin her financially. That's when she had a thought that would bother her for months. What if it's easier to just disappear? At night, she stood in front of the mirror for a long time. She put on mascara, false eyelashes, and a bright costume to look like she was ready for the stage. But the longer she looked at herself, the more clearly she saw a stranger's face. Tears ran down her cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. That was the first time she told herself she hated what she had become. Her voice, which had been her salvation, had become a curse. Fame, which had been a dream, had become a cage. And all that was real was her pain. At that moment, something inside her broke. A few weeks later, Courtney disappeared again, but this time she wasn't at home. She ran away to London and went to a small studio where no one knew her name. There, she recorded a song for the first time without any pressure, instructions, or a golden button hanging over her head. It was a cry of the soul that was raw and uneven, but real. When she put on the headphones and heard herself, she felt free for the first time in a long time. But they didn't have that freedom for long. The recording got out online and fans were split. Some said, "Genius." Some people said Courtney had lost herself, and what was worse was that the people she had loved had left her again. The phone rang, and someone on the other end said, "You belong to us." It looked like Courtney had no way out, but she hoped that her family would help her. Then she got a blow from somewhere she didn't expect it. One close family member she trusted sold information about her escape to the press for money. Headlines read, "Courtney Hadwin ran away from fame. The young star on the verge of a nervous breakdown." These things were true, but they were said as if she were a broken toy soldier. People who had known her since childhood turned away. That was the scariest thing she realized. She could no longer trust anyone. Not family, not friends, not even strangers. People started to recognize her even in London. They approached her with cameras, filmed her reactions, and posted them online. Every step became a meme, and every word a headline. She tried to hide by wearing a hood, but it didn't help. The more she hid, the harder they looked for her. Eventually, Courtney realized that her name had become a cage from which she could not escape. The worst thing was that she didn't feel alive. She seemed to exist for other people's wants, needs, and fears. Her own life was falling apart, and she thought, if the cage can't be broken, maybe the only way out is to disappear forever. At night, she wrote a letter with a shaking hand that was several pages long. There were no big words or accusations, just silence, exhaustion, and the confession, "I don't know who I am and I don't know if I can find myself." No one knew where she went because she didn't take her phone or passport. She just disappeared. Her parents called the police and the media yelled about a missing star. Fans wrote thousands of messages saying, "Courtney, come back." But she wasn't there. For the first time, everyone realized this wasn't just a story about fame. It was a tragedy that could end forever. There was a big search for Courtney all over Britain because she was missing and was the talk of the town. Missing young star of America's Got Talent. At the Leeds train station, security cameras caught her wearing a dark cloak. That was the last solid proof that she was there. After that, the trail went cold. The news media went crazy. Some reported that she had been abducted, while others suggested she had tried to kill herself. Fans were divided. Some blamed producers, others the family, and others the truth remained unknown. That night, Courtney did stand on the platform with a one-way ticket in her hands, but no one knew where she went. Then, a strange photo of a girl in a hoodie sitting on the steps of an old building in a London suburb went viral on the internet with the caption, "Looks like Courtney Hadwin." A lot of fans rushed to the area, but when reporters arrived, when she got there, the building was empty except for a shadow on the wall that looked like her silhouette. This picture became famous. Some said Courtney was hiding on purpose, while others said she was being held against her will. Later, it came out that the singer really did live there for a few weeks without a phone, electricity, or much contact with the outside world. Every day she asked herself, "Do I have the right to go back to the stage?" A neighbor called. An ambulance was sent to one of London's districts where Courtney had been hiding. A crash was heard, and she was found unconscious next to an empty bottle of water and some paper. She was severely exhausted, doctors said. The girl's body could not handle the constant stress and isolation, so she was taken to the hospital right away. Dozens of cameras stood guard outside the hospital doors, giving the world another spectacle. In the news, she was either called a heroine broken by fame or a victim of her own pride. But one thing stood out. Her story was no longer a fairy tale about the 2018 Golden Buzzer. It had become a tragedy about the price of a dream. When Courtney got out of the hospital, she wanted to start over, but the world wasn't waiting for her to get better. It was waiting for a new star. People with hidden cameras watched her at the door of her parents' house in Bishop Auckland, stopped her on the street, and filmed her. Newspapers ran with loud headlines, "Broken Wonder Girl, Hero, or Victim." In May, British outlets started comparing her to Amy Winehouse and Kurt Cobain, implying that she would follow in their tragic footsteps. Each comparison hurt her more. When she saw her picture on the front page, she knew the world was burying her alive. Despite everything, Courtney chose a step that was she went back on stage. There were only a few hundred people in the small club, and there was no fancy equipment or a golden buzzer. She was alone with a microphone and sang the first song as if she were screaming in pain. People in the hall cried. This wasn't acting, it was a cry from the heart. But with the cheers came a new fear. Phones were filming again, and recordings were being shared on the internet again. Courtney realized that even though she was on a small stage, She was still being held captive. A few days later, she got a letter. It wasn't from a fan or a friend. It was from the company that had signed the first contract. It was short. "Either you come back to us or we will destroy everything you have left. We will take the rights to your songs, your recordings, and your image." They gave her a choice. She could become a marionette again, or she could lose everything she had worked so hard to create. That's when Courtney knew she had to make a choice that would change everything. Courtney sat in her room with the letter in her hands. It felt like decades had passed. The contract told her to obey, the internet told her to put on a show, and her soul told her to be quiet. She called a lawyer, and the person on the other end told her, "They've cornered you, but there is one way out, the courts. It will be dirty, long, and risky. You can get your name back if you dare. Sue the people in the business who have money, power, and ties." It looked like a murder. But Courtney felt like she had to act now for the first time in her life, or else someone else would write the ending to her story. The hearings began. A lot of reporters, cameras, and news stories. Little rebel versus the big names in show business. Courtney looked weak in court, but her voice sounded strong. She talked about how she had lost freedom, being made into an object and being lied to. Every word was hard, but each lesson was a whole new pain. The company's lawyers made her look like a moody kid who couldn't handle fame. Still, more and more people started to think she wasn't a victim as the case went on. She could fight. It felt like she was given a punishment when the court ruled, but this time it wasn't for her. It was agreed that the deal hurt the rights of a minor. She got her freedom. Her songs, her name, and her freedom to be herself had been hers again. But there was no happiness. It wasn't a win. I had to stay alive. She stood on the steps of the building with cameras shining in her eyes. She smiled honestly for the first time in a long time all of a sudden. She knew now that the tragedy had not broken her. She had been hit with a death threat, lied to, and lived through the hell of fame, but she came out of it different. The real Courtney Hadwin, not the little girl with the golden buzzer or a copy of other famous people. When the case was over, Courtney lots of people and loud shows. She stopped being on TV, her social media accounts were shut down, and she quit doing interviews. What did people think about her? Some said she was hurt and wouldn't come back. Others that she was writing a new record behind their backs. That being said, Courtney decided to be quiet. Her journey began in a small town, which she went back to. People saw her walking her dog in the library, and sometimes quietly singing on a street that was empty. Not for other people, but for herself. It was also strange. People wanted her to put on a show, but for the first time, she wasn't upset about not having one. Courtney Hadwin is working hard on her music business as a solo artist in the year 2025. She put out her first record, Little Miss Jagged, which has songs with very personal lyrics. She used to be signed to Simon Cowell's label, but they broke up. Now Courtney is in charge of all of her songs and the creative process. The song Spellbound came out in February. Courtney has a lot of fans on social media sites, especially TikTok, where she shows off her work and her personality. She wants to make music in her own way, without giving in to pressure from the music business, and she wants to stay sincere and real. The press writes after a show, she has closed the circle. From her first appearance on The Voice Kids UK in 2017 to a small stage in her hometown in 2025. But this isn't the end. It's more of an open question. What will Courtney do next? Will she finally choose to be quiet? Fans are sure that Courtney Hadwin's story isn't over yet, but it's clear that no matter what she does, her name will go down in history as one of the most divisive and sad people in show business.